Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody? This is not the smartest guys in the room. I see my dear friend Tom. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, buddy. I'm doing well. I'm back in the saddle, back from an abbreviated vacation after the race up in Lake Placid, and yeah, back at it, back at the desk. How about you?
I I actually went online to find Iron Man's that day. This is how much I care about you. I went on Iron Man's that day, and then it like eliminated him down, and I'm like, what part of the world would Tom be in? And I got to Lake Placid, and I was on a site looking for you, and that's as far as I could go. So, and that was the detail. Then all of a sudden, so here's our friendship. Let me tell you about Tom. I sent Tom a message like 10 days ago, 8 days ago. Tom, how did it go? My friend is swimming in a lake, risking his life to some extent. Pushing the boundaries, running all those miles, riding bikes all those miles. The response I got. I got no response. I had to double back like 5 days later and be like, "Hey, Tom, you still alive?" And then I think I got a response. So, Tom, you want to weigh in on how important Dom is to you?
Yeah, I want to weigh in because I want to be clear about exactly what you sent me, right? So we you texted me on Sunday, the day of the race, at about 5:40 p.m. I had not finished yet. I was still racing when you texted me, so I didn't have my phone. I didn't know you texted me, and what you texted me verbatim, this is the text I got, was any word question mark. Not how'd you do, not how's it going, not how was the race, any word. And I thought you sent it to me accidentally because it didn't make any sense to me. Any word about what? Like, I mean, any word about me from me? Like, that's a weird question. So, yeah. So, like, I didn't respond right away because I didn't even think you meant to send me that text. And I got it while I was still, it was delivered to my phone, which was not with me while I was still running the race, and I was inundated with texts that actually made sense from other people that night who were like, "Hey, how'd it go? How'd you do? Congratulations, nice job, way to get it done, whatever," things like that. And so yeah, so I responded to those texts that I got after I finished because, as we've discussed before, because I think you've followed me, you've tracked me on Ironman races before. There's an app. You just go into the app, you select the race, you type in my name, and like there it is, and you can follow me through the whole race course. Like I feel like we've talked about it before, but anyway, so your Ludditeness, your ineptitude with technology led you to like a website somewhere where there's no ability to track anybody. There's probably, I'd be willing to bet that there's information on the website that says if you want to track someone racing, here's how you do it. But apparently you didn't find that. And so then you texted me any word, and like all of this to say, I appreciate the effort. I definitely appreciate the effort, but there is no way I'm going to let you spin this as if I'm a total jerk because I didn't text you back after you showed care and concern for me during my race, because all you texted was any word question mark. And I was like, I like in my dazed state after 13 and a half hours of racing, I looked at that text and I was like, any word about what? And I just went to the next text. So it didn't make any sense to me, and that's why you didn't get a response.
Now, let me reframe this from my perspective. When you care about somebody so much, and when they're in like the middle of something so big, like Tom, this is like having a baby. You in the middle of giving birth, you don't talk about the finish. You don't talk about this is like how about an update on, because even Becky could have had your phone, like, and that's what I'm thinking, like, so uh at this moment, what is going on? And so that's like a slight way you could be like, hurt my knee, injured. Tom drowned in the pool, or Tom had his best race ever. So that's why I proceeded lightly with what I asked, because I didn't want to, like, hey, how was the success? How was the successful finish? Did you get your best time ever? No, this, or you know, it got rained out. A hurricane came through. So that's how why I proceeded the way I did.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate it. Becky was not responding to texts on my behalf. She had my phone, but she wasn't responding to texts on my behalf. She was like, he can deal with that later. I don't need to deal with that.
Yeah, it could have been like, hey, Tom, no, Tom's at mile 16, really showing fight today. Tom's really looking good. Thanks. But anyway, all right, Tom. Now that we covered that, this is not the smartest guys in the room. We're talking about TikTok and digital news consumption today, really digital news choice. And we could go all over the place with this, but this is where I wanted to start, Tom. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. I have some thoughts too. I mean, I think, there's a couple of things going on, right? So Pew Research put out an article basically like talking about how the sort of young adults, people who are currently sort of in that age bracket of young adults, which is I think 18 to 29 is sort of the age range that they categorize as young adults. Folks in that age range tend to get their news from different sources than we've seen in the past, right? And those sources tend to be TikTok, other sort of video first platforms, right? So what we see is a lot of young adults, these people who are 18 to 29, not going to traditional news sources to get news. And I think that's a product of a couple of things. One, it's totally unsurprising to me, right? Because most young adults, even if they are in the sort of like, in the category or in that age group where they're out living on their own, they don't have cable TV, right? Like they don't have traditional television. I don't even have traditional television, and I'm like 20 years out of that age bracket, right? Like, so there's no surprise to me that they're not getting their news from traditional sources because they don't have access to traditional sources because they don't have legacy media. They don't have, broadcast television streaming into their homes like we all did growing up or like our parents did, right? So of course they're getting their news from other places. So part of this is like, well, freaking duh, right? Like obviously. But then I think the other side of it is that, there is this sort of lens that people are looking at this through, like, oh, they're getting it from social media, which means that like it is wholly unreliable. And I would say not exactly. Is it wholly unreliable? No. Is it totally reliable? Also no, right? It requires, and I think this is true of some legacy media too. I mean, we could talk about certain channels, depending on what side of the political spectrum you're on. You probably name different ones, right? But there are channels that are sort of widely regarded by broad swaths of the public to be, to peddle false news or fake news, right? As the phrase goes. So, whether or not the vehicle through which people are getting their platform, I think is less important than who they're getting their news from, and whether or not they're actually fact checking or source checking that news, right? And I think that's the really important thing. That's the place where I think we need to push for improvement or change, and that's to encourage people, regardless of where you get your news, whether you get your news from traditional media platforms, whether you get your news from broadcast television, whether you get your news from TikTok or Instagram or YouTube Shorts or YouTube, right? Wherever you get your news from, I think it's important that we always check the stories for veracity, for truthfulness, right? One of the ways that I do that is I kind of apply a filter, right, that is akin to the way I was taught to do research when I was in school for like research projects. And that is, if you're going to treat something as sort of true, then it needs to be corroborated independently. And so what I'll do is when I see a story and like I get a little flag goes up and it goes, that seems too simple, too neat, too clean, too easy, right? Any of those kind of things pop into my head, then I immediately go and I search, right, for the sort of result or the conclusion of that news story. And I look to see if other independent sources have reached the same conclusion, or if there's similar reporting from multiple sources that's been well reported, right? That meets high journalistic standards. And then I accept it. So like, I don't care if you get your news from TikTok. I don't care if you get it from Instagram. I don't care if you get it from broadcast television. It doesn't make any difference to me. The vehicle makes no difference. The thing that matters is whether or not the information you're getting is factual and accurate. It's always going to be biased a little bit, right? There is no way to wholly eliminate bias. There's no such thing as a completely unbiased news source. It doesn't exist because all humans carry some amount of bias with us no matter what, right? So there's no such thing as any sort of human news source that is wholly unbiased. But I think that if you manage to check the news source and you can do a good job of making sure that it is truthful, the information you're getting is relatively truthful and relatively unbiased, then I think the vehicle really doesn't matter. Like, who cares if young people are getting their news through TikTok? Like, what we should be more focused on is like, are they getting good information, right? Who cares how they get it? Is it good, right? That's the question we should be asking, not stressed about like, oh, they're not watching the nightly news. Well, of course they're not. They don't have TV, Grandpa.
Tom, I like the frame of reference that you put in there. Biased. I wasn't thinking about that at all. And I think in my sources, if I was going to say, okay, what am I really looking for? Yeah, there probably is some biases. I try to check multiple sources, but I think where I draw the line maybe is when people start giving their opinion on news. And so we could talk about the opinion media and the 24-hour media. But for me, it's okay, I can look on KDK, that's a local Pittsburgh station. This happened this morning. This person wrecked into this. This happened on the trail. This was a stabbing on the bike trail. Okay, stabbing on bike trail intent. Okay. Now, take no opinion from that. Here's the fact of what happened. Fact, stabbing during tents. I don't know. And a guy standing beside the tents telling us what his thoughts, like you said, there's a bias. And once it's no longer news, once that person speaks an opinion about what he thinks happened. No, that what happened there was last night. And the evidence tells us, and even I guess you can bias evidence, but the evidence tells us this, the witnesses tell us this is what happened. After that, when you're trying to fill 24 hours of media and prime time, and you've covered the 9 stories, on all those news stations, the prime time people, they're doing entertainment, trying to fill 2 hours, trying to get you stirred up, trying to get you mad and keep you watching. It's not the 15-minute story that we saw 6 hours earlier. So Tom, that's where I'll start. And then I got some other thoughts, but go on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with people with opinions, right? I think and opinions being shared. I think there's actually some benefit to hearing a variety of opinions, right, on a given subject. That variety of opinions can lead you to think more critically or change your thoughts on a given set of facts that you have, right? So I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with sort of punditry, right? But I think it needs to be clear, separate, like a clear separation. I think there needs to be a line drawn between, news delivery and punditry. They're two different things, right? And like you said, One is a delivery of factual information, right? In as unbiased as possible a way, right? So here's what happened. Here's what we know, right? We know, and we'll just run with your example, right? We know that there was a stabbing. We know it happened near the path. We know it happened, inside of this tent that was on the side of the path. We know it happened sometime last night. We know that the police are investigating. We know that they have a list of subjects. We don't know who those subjects are yet, right? I mean, that's news, right? That's factual reporting. And then, like in a separate, I think you need to separate it, like in a very, very clear way. I don't think you can have that reporter then turn around and say, here's what I think, right? But you can have that reporter present other people's opinions. So they can say, like, locals have argued for a long time that they think this path without lighting on it is a hotbed for crime, and they've been concerned for years. And local folks have long contended, blah 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 blah, right? Like whatever the case may be. Or they could throw it back to somebody in the studio, and the people in the studio could then provide opinions based on the set of facts. But I think there needs to be a clear delineation between like news reporting and punditry. I don't think punditry is inherently bad. I think there's too much of it. But that's a product of like the 24-hour news cycle, right? And the idea that we have to just fill airtime no matter what. We're moving a little bit away from that because we're getting out of that broadcast media, right? That 24-hour news cycle like is slowly dying. So as people get news information from TikTok, it can come in short little bursts. They don't have to fill 24 hours. They can, Aaron Parnas is a good example of this. He does this. He does short videos all the time, and it'll just be an update. Here's what's happening. Here's what we know. That's it. Like the whole video is like 35 seconds long, right? It's just breaking news. Here's what's happening. Here's what we know. When we know more, we'll come back and let you know. And that's it. So like he doesn't have to just talk for an hour straight. He can just make a little 37-second clip and upload it and be done, right? So like we're losing some of that pressure to fill airtime because airtime doesn't really exist in the same way anymore. And I think that's a good thing. I think maybe we're going to get a little bit better punditry as a result of it, and maybe some better reporting. But at the end of the day, I think just be skeptical, right? Like just be sort of eternally, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean like when you hear something, don't just accept it because somebody said it, right? Try to verify it. Or when you present it to other people, couch it, right? Like give it context. Say, I heard someone say, rather than supplying it as fact. And I think if we do a better job of being of healthy skepticism and exercising healthy skepticism, of doing a little bit more research and due diligence, and of presenting information with proper context, i.e. not as fact, but as something we heard that we have not yet verified, right? Then I think we'll be in a better place. But at the end of the day, again, the vehicle makes no difference. I think people are just like, oh, TikTok, because it's like where people do dances. It's like, yeah, but there's a lot of other stuff happening on that platform, just like there's a lot of other stuff happening on Instagram or on YouTube, or on LinkedIn, right? I get a lot of information about about business news and things happening in the media industry from LinkedIn, right? Because people share it there because it's business related, it's industry related, right? So I get a lot of that information from LinkedIn and from the stuff that people share there. But again, you got to put it through that filter. You got to exercise some healthy skepticism, and properly contextualize the information when you pass it on.
Tom, absolutely good stuff. Well said. I'm going to take a different approach here and go down a line a path you went down here. I call it distribution platform. And in these distribution platforms, distribution of content, people are on social right now. People live in social media. Like you said, maybe legacy media is dying. So when people are on social, I go when I'm looking for news, I go to the people I trust on those platforms. Like if it's sports, there's a guy named Adam Schefter that he breaks stuff for ESPN, but he also breaks it himself. Or stuff people that talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates or KDKA, that's the local news source I said here in Pittsburgh. Like I'll go to them on the social. So this like you mentioned, like this old thought. You're going to social, and social's bad because people dance. That's so archaic. Your your trusted source, whoever that is on. I don't know if like CNN's on TikTok. I assume they are, or if you're on Fox. I bet Fox is on TikTok. I bet New York Times, whoever you're looking, ESPN. I mean, they're on every platform, and I believe on the platforms I use, I look for the people that I trust, and it's the same model. I just want the people I trust give me the news because you've earned it. I don't care where you distribute it to me. Distribute it where I am, and if I'm on Instagram that day and ESPN comes through or KDKA or NBC Nightly News, okay, I take it. Now, granted, if they do things to make me lose their trust, if they start adding too much opinion that I just am looking for the news. And then to your point, I always have, like, if I was listening to CNN, I went to Fox. If I was listening to Fox, I went to MSNBC. Try to give me some new, how are each of these reporting, and then me myself discern and find what I think is the truth somewhere in between. So, what say you, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is the thing. It's so funny because it's so predictable, right? In like the dumbest way possible. Um, I had this thought as you were speaking, and you were talking about like people it being archaic, that people were sort of like looking down their nose at the platforms that people were going to for news. And I had this thought, and I was like, in the back of my mind, I was like, I bet, I bet that this has happened before, and I bet this happened when television news started in the 1940s. And lo and behold, just a very quick research, Google search, right? And I found an article on journalism history, right? Literally the website, journalism-history.org, right? And the first paragraph is, and I'll read it because it's so perfect. Television news started out as the bastard child of radio news and the film newsreel, and it was almost immediately disowned by those in the news business as superficial, trivial, and incomplete. Most print journalists either ignored or dismissed television news when it started its birth pangs in the late 1940s. So, like, here we go again, right? So now, like, television news is the gold standard, just like in the 1940s or before, it was print journalism was the gold standard, right? And so now television news is the gold standard. And lo and behold, we have people looking down their nose at at internet journalism, right? At digital media news sources. So totally unsurprising to me. It's one of those things. It's like it's to me, it is the same as the old thing of like, subsequent or preceding generations looking at subsequent generations and complaining that they have it easier than them, and that they have it easier than them, and that they don't work as hard, right? It's the same exact thing. So yeah. So that's, I mean, that's what we have going on is exactly that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's hilarious.
No, Tom, your premise is your premise is very accurate there, and it reminds me of our talk a week ago 2 weeks ago when we talked about business cycles, news, radio stations buying, internet radio stations buying regular radio stations, newspaper buying more newspapers, TV buying newspapers. It's a common business cycle. So, well said. Hey, okay, Tom.
I don't know,
Uh,
however we're on.
okay, this is on that same vein of what we've been talking about today. So, in Tom's Thumbs, Tom weighing in after your 20 some years in production, you always have an opinion on things. So we ask a thumbs up or thumbs down. Today, I saw Sam Altman complaining that maybe AI was growing too fast. So I want to know a thumbs up or thumbs down to Sam Altman complaining that AI is growing too fast, Tom.
So, funnily enough, I had a conversation with my colleague Evan about this yesterday, and we were talking about AI. We were kind of talking about and lamenting the fact that we think it is getting worse, and I think it is essentially the inevitable conclusion that people like Sam Altman have led us towards, right? And that is essentially just, and we've heard this term in other places. I definitely did not coin this term, don't take credit for it, but I like it a lot. What we're seeing is the enshittification of AI, right? This is the enshittification of large language models. And there's some school of thought, and I happen to think that this is possibly true. There are some schools of thought that what's happening with AI is there's this huge push to get as many users as possible to adopt, right? And the reason that is because with any other sort of subscription model, this is the same playbook that we've seen over and over again with subscription models. Amazon Prime is a great example of this. But basically, the idea is you get as many people as possible to subscribe as quickly as possible by making things incredibly inexpensive, right? Unaffordably for the business inexpensive. And essentially the business goes into the red in order to cut the price for the consumer so they can get as many people as possible to sign on as quickly as possible. And then once they reach a certain threshold, they turn up the price, right? And you get this sort of, or they make the product worse and or cheaper so that they can actually afford to continue the business and turn that sort of that loss into a profit for the business. And so you end up with this enshittification, right? That's what that term refers to, is that process of like make something really, really irresistible by being inexpensive and very useful. And then when you get a lot of people to sign on to it and start using it, you make it more expensive and you make it worse, i.e. less expensive to produce, and then you make more money, right? That's exactly the playbook that all the AI models have been following. I mean, we've been talking about this for months. I've been saying for a long time, look at who is talking about how everyone has to adopt AI as fast as possible. It's the people who stand to benefit the most from more people adopting AI as fast as possible. And there's some school of thought that actually the way large language models work is the more people use them, right, the more they sort of learn from their own users, and they incorporate those experiences into the language model, those interactions into the language model, right, which is supposed to theoretically over time make them better. But I think what's happening is you get a lot of people throwing really stupid prompts at a large language model and giving it really stupid guidance, and you end up with a dumber large language model, right? A worse large language model. And I think that's what we're seeing happen. And I don't think that people like Sam Altman realized that what they were doing was they were actually limiting their own product, right? By getting all these people to adopt it so quickly without really understanding how to use it and how to use it well, you get bad uses of it, and then it makes it worse. And so now they've got a product that's already worse, but they haven't gotten to the part where they flip the switch and turn up the price and start making money yet. And so they've kind of shot themselves in the foot. So all of that is to say, does Sam Altman get a thumbs up or a thumbs down for me. Sam Altman gets a double thumbs down for me. I have zero sympathy for him. I have zero empathy for him. He 100% made this bed, and now he has to lie in it. And I say, good luck getting to sleep, buddy.
Tom, love your take on it, and I couldn't agree more on this. As a publisher, seeing the books come in, large language model, prompts that agree with you. A post is 50 words, a bio is 250 words. The longer the product is, the more I see the duplication. So when you're looking at a 40,000 word document, 50,000 words, 60,000, 150,000 words, I'm telling you I'm going to do this with the next manuscript that comes my way that feels overly influenced by ChatGPT. I want to know if it is, I'm going to start dividing out the characters, even words in the chapter, and seeing how close they are each time. Because the large language model is missing the longer it goes. It's agreeing with. I agree with Tom. Yes, I will rewrite this. Yep, rewrote it the same. Rewrote it the same. 50 other people wrote it the same. I was talking to. You'll appreciate this. I was talking to one of my clients the other day, dear friend Dean Hargrove, legendary producer in Hollywood. He wrote Matlock. He created Matlock. He wrote the pilot for Columbo, did all the Perry Masons, and we're talking about writing and AI, and he's in his 80s, and we're talking about what's going on, and he wants to be aware because he still has so much content to put out. And I started telling him about AI producing M dashes. And I said, Dean, I got a manuscript with 1,000 M dashes in it the other day. And he's like, Dominic, what's an M dash? You know, here's a guy that's produced for years and years and years the things that have impacted our lives, changed film, changed television. No clue what an M dash is. I'm like, hey, it's a power pause. Maybe I'd use this. I'd use Dominic in my writing. I might use a power pause like that every 30,000 words. You know, here it has replaced the comma because the large language model saw it. More people are doing it. And it's just wrong, Tom. It's not right. And here it just repeats the error over and over. So what say you about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason why these models are getting worse at writing in particular, I think that's the one where it's like really easy to see that it's getting worse. I think part of the reason why they're getting worse is because not enough people are good enough writers who are using large language models, right, to push back on things like bizarre sentence construction. One of the things that I notice all the time, and like one of the sort of telltale signs that I can tell something was written by AI and somebody who's not a very good writer just sort of accepted it, is the loss of the use of subjects, right? Like, so you'll have sentence construction where there's no subject, right? It's all he, them, they, it, right? It's all pronouns, but there's no subject, right? So I'm like, who, what, where, when? Like, I don't know what we're talking about because you're not giving me a subject for the sentence. So it doesn't make any sense. And then, like, so if you respond to the prompt, it'll say, oh, you're right. I did skip putting the subject in. That wasn't clear. Here's the sentence with the subject, right? But I think enough people aren't pushing back because they don't know, either they don't know to or they don't care to, whatever the case may be, but they're not pushing back. And so as people accept the prompts, I think that teaches the large language model to sort of like go with the lowest common denominator. Like, what do people accept as an answer? Okay, then that's the answer we're likely to give, right? Because it's accepted. Again, it makes total sense when you understand how these large language models work and that they are basically just predictive algorithms that are very sophisticated with huge data sets. So like, it essentially is like the predictive text on your phone. So as you're typing on your phone and the words pop up above the keyboard, right, of like what word is most likely to come next based on the letters that you've already entered. That's how the large language models work. So they part of the predictive nature of them means that whatever answer is accepted they are more likely to deliver in the future, right? Because it is to their way of thinking a correct answer. So I think at the end of the day, people accepting these bad answers, accepting this bad writing, is making the large language models worse at writing because people don't know enough to push back on bad sentence construction, on overuse of em dashes, on putting a period. I've seen things where like people post stuff and I'm like, that's not even a sentence. Why is there a period? That's just a phrase, right? There's no verb. It's just a collection of nouns. Like that's not a sentence. You can't have a sentence without a verb, right? Like, so what are we doing? But yeah. So I mean, it's. I think that's what I think is happening. I mean, I don't know. Am I oversimplifying? Potentially, right? But I'll just say I'll give it the proper context. That's my opinion.
Tom, well said. I want to know. I bet I could go to your book, Legendary, and I would bet that never or maybe once in the whole book you used two-word sentences. Two word, two word, two word, two word three times. Like then one word sentences, one period, one live, breathe, love. Every you talk about large language model. How many are you seeing with two-word sentences, three paragraphs later, two-word sentences, two-word sentences, two word, three in a row, three in a word, three in a word. I mean, it's mind. I mean, it's and then like the one word, like you're saying, it's so obvious. How about put one more thing in your chat GPT and say, don't give me any two-word sentences. Limit two-word sentences. Limit one-word sentence. No repeating of two-word sentences. I mean, come on, Tom. It's driving me nuts.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, there. So the funny thing is like in Legendeering, which was wholly written before these large language models. So like it never went through a large language model. We didn't, there was no use of a large language model in the writing of the book at all, right? There are em dashes in the book, right? Because we used them for emphasis, right? There are for that sort of pause. There are a couple of places. There's one place in particular I can think of where we used like a staccato, like one word sentences for like heavy emphasis on something. But like, again, there's one place in the top, off the top of my head that I can think of where like that we did that, right? And that was a deliberate choice to really draw attention to what I was saying because it deserved that emphasis. If you do it every paragraph, it loses its effect. It's just bad writing. If you do it once or twice in a couple 100-page book, it jumps out, right? So it's like anything else. Like too much of a good thing is a bad thing, right? Like I love ice cream. Who doesn't love ice cream? I know there are some weird people who don't love ice cream, but like most people love ice cream. Like, but even people who love ice cream the most would hate ice cream if they had to eat it for every meal, right? If every meal was ice cream, you'd stop liking ice cream, right? And so if everything is emphasized, if everything has sort of uses a tool to draw attention to it, then it stops losing meaning, right? If everything's good, then nothing's good, right? You have to have kind of both sides of the coin for it to make sense. So yeah, so that's, I mean, I see a ton of that happening. We have kind of gone way down the rabbit hole here, off of what we originally started talking about. But to bring us back and maybe see what Jason thinks about the original topic that we started the show with. Jason, we originally were talking about the fact that increasingly young adults are getting their news from social media platforms like TikTok, right, and other digital first platforms, and just sort of looking at that from a couple of different perspectives. A, is it a good thing or a bad thing? B, does it make any difference? Or C, should we go back to newspapers and get rid of all sort of digital media to speak of? So I don't know. So what do you think about the fact that young adults are primarily getting their news from social
Oh,
media?
it's not just young adults. It's a lot of the adults in our own generation that are sick and tired of like the same news that you would see CNN, MSNBC, no matter how it is. The journalism, remember the key words, your definition determines part of the destination, right? When you use a word like in your page 1 of your book, Legendary, I want to bring that to note because I did buy your book and I did send it to you. And one of the things you did very well is on page 1, if people looked at it and they see what you put, would really determine where you're starting and where you're ending. So you defined 2 distinctive definitions about legendarying. You said the act of designing and constructing a strong and stable framework to create an engaging story driven by video content. How does that relate to a newspaper? Same thing, different performance, different frame. How many people are like, we talk about algorithms and AI is just doing what many of us we've already always done, copycatting, right? If you can't create it, copy it and steal it like you did, right? There's that theory, right? But it's just like, where's originality? Where's the context? How does my human experience relate to legendary? And that's what you kind of covered in 2, part 2 of what you said. You said leveraging the power of storytelling through video and engineering a rapid business growth, but fostering a long lasting, meaningful relationship between business and their audience. Now, if I were to say something different, but people, forget business. Business is a result that I do with people, right? But people, I tell a story. So do you. So does Dom. So does Julie, Wendy, Hashem, Soma, whoever's in here, whoever's watching. We all tell a story daily. And how much of it is a copycat or repeat of somebody else's work? How much is their originality? When you stop worrying about it and really get into something I talked about in my own TikTok live, and it talked about Marcus Aurelius, like, hey, when you fall down, how do you design yourself to get back up? Did you build a framework to get back up? Some people stay stuck in being hurt. Some people say, you know what, brush it off, keep going. That's a part of your book, part of your process. Tom, you don't go into these, let's just say, human defying events without training, right? You don't. You have to put in road work, pool work, or swim work, and biking. If you don't, guess what happens? The frame that you expect to last you long term won't work to finish the race. So do we think about the person or the people we really want to be? We kind of like play a lot of guessing along. But if you say, this is the person, this is my character, that's there in my mind, this is how I fill it out, this is what represents, I'm good. Then the algorithm stuff doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter how you made the formula, it's did the product come out? So yeah, I don't like AI and what people are doing with AI, and they're going to hit a brick wall. When someone asks you, so Tom, tell me about legendarying according to regular life. I'm a podcaster, I'm a streamer. I've tried all the things, I bought the most famous equipment. I did everything you said in your book, and I described the whole process. And then I ask you, tell me what I did wrong. And it's like, that's where you choose the option. And as a Stoic, I would tell you, I'm glad you know all these things. And part of your solution is what you just listed. How much have you stepped back and given yourself patience? And how do you relate to people? So hopefully this answers what you brought me on. Thank you for always inviting me up to the stage. I'm glad to see my friends and people I relate to. So thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jason. I have to say, I appreciate your kind words about the book. I really do. It means a lot to me when people read the book and understand it and appreciate what I'm trying to accomplish with it. And I think you're absolutely right. Like at the end of the day, one of the things I want people to sort of walk away from reading that book with, or even just talking with me or working with me, is really that understanding that and it's the reason why the subtitle on the front cover has this word that, like, you know, at the end of the day, my mission, my goal is to humanize the world of business through better communications, right? And ultimately, I think we all do better when on the sort of on the business side and on the consumer side, we all remember that ultimately we're just people dealing with people, right? And yeah, so I appreciate you reading the book. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on it.
Last note. So
Yeah.
Tom, this is a part of your hero's journey, right? You like the word legendary. And a few weeks ago I said, hey, I'll buy your book, right? I kept my word. And then we pointed out that how often are you really inviting people to read the book? What are you hooking? Remember, you know, John, you know, he's like hooking a pitch. Remember we talked about it with Julie, right? So if you're using Not the Smartest Guys in like Telex, right? I forgot your brand was behind Telex and I can't find you. Where are you sending your invitations to the people that could best use it? And what are you teasing them with what they don't know so they could read your book? Because I feel like writers, if you don't take the time to tease the public, they're never curious to read your work. And I think I'm not done with your book, but I think you have potential. So remember, tease the public with your curiosity and your experience. Do that. Don't lay on it. Don't forget it. And if you can't do it, you hire someone like Julie or Wendy or whoever else, or our friends or people qualify. It's like, help me tease the public to get them buy more. And that's my last suggestion.
Yeah, appreciate that, Jason. And absolutely right. I mean, I definitely need to do a better job. I need to treat my business more like a client than I do. So appreciate that reminder. Something I'm always working towards being better at. So yeah. Dom, what do you say we hop into PSAs real quick before we keep moving? Does that sound good?
Yeah, I got so many thoughts. I'm gonna pin. I'm gonna pin note in for something later, and then I'm ready for PSAs. Tom, you want to go first, and we'll get. Julie usually likes to weigh in on PSAs, so I see her up on the stage. So this is a good time for her to come up as well. So you want to go first, or you want me to?
I was going to have you go first. Just remember, look at your screen and don't put your face behind the countdown clock, and then you won't complain to me later that it was in front of your face. Because
okay, let's see if I got it just. And if you ever hear the podcast, all this gets edited out. They call it fluff. So go on.
I say leave it in. I think that the back and forth is what people are here for sometimes. A little bit.
You want the back and forth a little bit, yeah, a little bit of Tom, get on camera. Okay, yeah, I'm ready, right, man. Let's do
all
this.
Right, here we go.
PSA today. This one came to me this morning. I was watching a news program this morning, and they started talking about AI teachers, robotic teachers in schools. So they rolled out a robotic teacher in school, and the robotic teachers were tutors. So they were worried about them taking jobs away. Then it turns out the same company that made the robotic teacher for our students was also the same company that made the real doll, a sex doll. So my PSA today is, if you're going to go into business and you're going to have different offerings, maybe figure out offerings that agree with each other, not an offering like a tutor, an AI tutor, and a sex doll. These things do not, are not two things that go together on the tree of business. It is odd. It is weird. Don't do that. That's my PSA.
So yeah, that is quite a left turn, right? From from sex doll to tutor. I don't know that you want the same manufacturer making both. That's, yeah. Or maybe just silo the businesses a little bit, right? Like, so they don't fall under the same name.
Yeah, like, I'm on your website, tutor sex doll. I mean, I think you're going to have some creepy buyers get very confused very quickly. So that's where I'll stop on that. Tom, what do you got for us?
All right. So I'm going to go with something that is salient today because of the weather that we have going on in the Northeast where I live. We've got a bunch of rain going on over a couple of days, some localized flooding, and I just want to send this message out to everybody who is thinking about getting in their car over the next day or two as we're seeing some of these torrential rainstorms. And I would just say this. If you're nervous about driving in the rain, just don't. Stay home, right? But there's a couple of things you can't do. You can't drive at 5 miles an hour with your flashers on as if that's okay, right? Stop putting your flashers on when there's rain and you have to slow down. That's not what they're for, right? They're hazard lights that are designed to be used when you're pulled over on the side of the road. They don't mean you can just drive like an idiot, right? So stop doing it. If you don't like driving in the rain, it's going to be raining for the next couple of days. Stay home.
Tom, okay, coming from the Northeast, I got a question for you. In the winter, when it's like snowy and icy, it seems like everybody in the whole town's driving around with their flashers on. Does your message change during winter weather, or what do you think?
That's not what flashers are for. I don't know who came up with this idea that like, hey, we can just drive however we want if we put our flashers on. Like, that's not how it works, right? If you need to drive slow because it's snowy, fine. If you need to slow down because it's raining so hard you literally can't see where you're going, right? Or you can't see far enough in front of you to drive safely, like at a highway speed, then slow down. Like, I'm not saying don't slow down. I'm just saying that's not what your flashers are for. And if you are so nervous about driving in the weather, then don't drive. And if you do have to drive, then like plan extra time, right? Take a a less traveled route so you don't have to drive on the highway, right? If you're not comfortable driving at highway speeds, like all of these things, there are a multitude of options available to you, right? But none of those options include driving with your flashers on just because you feel like it. Like, that's not a thing. It's not okay. You can't do it. Stop doing it. And your flashers aren't permission to just drive however you want to, right? Like, that's not what they're for. They're for if you break down and have to pull over. Like, that's what they're designed for. So, yeah.
Tom, fair take on it. I want to have a flasher debate with you, but I don't know that the audience wants to hear our flasher debate. But Tom, what if I'm driving in the winter and somebody's going to run into me? Because the visibility is so bad.
How do you know someone's going to run into you? Like,
because I can't see the car in front of me. I mean,
did you run into the car in front of you?
I might.
But did you?
I didn't because I'm not one of these crappy drivers you're talking about.
Well, so I mean, here's the thing: is like you can't see. So if you're stopped, right, because of traffic or an accident or something, yeah, absolutely, put your flashers on. I've done that. Like when I come up on traffic, you're driving down the highway and all of a sudden traffic is stopped. I absolutely have put my flashers on when I'm like the last car, there's nobody behind me, right? To make sure that people, as they come up, go, oh, that car's not moving, that car's stopped. There's something going on, right? Like that's a good use of hazard lights. But just drive it along with hazard lights on. It's sort of like what we talked about before, right? Like when do they stop meaning anything? If you're just driving around with hazard lights on whenever it's raining or whenever it's snowing, what are you trying to tell people, right? What, that it's snowing? I can see it's snowing. If I couldn't see it snowing, I definitely shouldn't be behind the wheel of a car. Like I don't need your flashers to let me know that there's bad weather outside. I've been outside, right? I'm driving in it right now. So like if you use them too much, they stop meaning anything. And then what are we doing? So like use them when it's appropriate. Stop just driving around with your flashers on.
Okay, I accept your premise of using them when necessary and not just randomly driving around with your flashers on all day. That is odd and weird. Okay, so now, Julie, Loken, and Dr. Tachi, just because you're jumping in now, since we've talked about flashers, real doll tutors, we've talked about people getting their news sources from TikTok, going to TikTok and Twitter for news and random places. Julie, Dr. Tachi, if you would like, you can weigh in on any of those subjects before we get to a memory lane, before we get to a close. So, Julie, if you're here, what do you got for us?
Hi, gentlemen. So great to hear your voices, and kudos to Tom for an amazing book. And I don't know, I think he teases this book. I don't know, you can always start promoting your book anytime. But okay, sex dolls and tutors. Brilliant. Do you see how much press they're getting right now? Would Dom even be talking about this? The through line is they're providing services or products for people that don't want to do the job. So teachers, decline in teachers, and take a look at why you're ordering that sex doll. So there is that through line. I see that. And I think Tom is just wasting breath talking about hazards, because no matter what happens, people are always going to do it. The minute the first snow, the first rain. But I'm kind of surprised in New York, like they're not better drivers. I could see this more in the South because they're not used to it. So that's all I got. Take care, gentlemen.
I was going to say, Dom, I bet the sales of the sex doll / tutors to teenage boys are through the roof.
I wasn't going to go in on this subject without being prompted on this, but I mean, people are so confused now on what they're, they're going to be like, wait a minute. People are going to start trying to make out with the tutor in front of the class and stuff like that. It could be all the people will be staying after
I
class.
don't think so, Dom.
People will be staying after class for tutoring like crazy, Julie. Yeah, all kinds of weird things will be going on.
I think there's probably a lot of teenage boys trying to convince their parents that they need an AI tutor doll that's made by a sex doll company, in the hopes that it also has some of the other features of the other products of that company. Yeah.
And it's only a man that would buy a sex doll too, just FYI.
There's a market for everything. Okay, Dr. Tachi, we have digital news, we have hazard lights, we have people going to TikTok, we have tutors that are sex dolls. What do you got for us?
Good morning, everyone. So let's tackle the people going to TikTok / social media for news. This is inevitable because it's easy. You grab your phone and do it, and you don't have to necessarily always intentionally look for things, especially if your algorithm is set in a particular way and that type of stuff comes up. So I'm not surprised. I think one of the studies actually documents that Gen Z go to TikTok for news more than any other place. And I would probably say that spans out to people in general, because television news, newspapers, radio news, those tend to draw in older demographics. I will say this, though. It is great, but you still have to do your vetting. You still have to check. I always tell people you should not go with the first thing you see and take that as Bible. You need to check at least 3 sources and look for agreement. And if you see agreement amongst the news sources, there's probably some modicum of truth to it. And I think also that people are gravitating toward those because there's a huge mistrust of mainstream media and corporate media, namely corporate news. All you have to do is look at the meddling that's going on with this. And this is not to say that they've always been fine and upright. No, because there's always been a slant to every news organization. However, it's even more prevalent now because of fear or because of trying to cozy up. And so, as such, people have lost their trust in corporate news, in corporate media. And so they're looking for other sources to get information about their world. And social media is easy and it's free. I digress.
I love it. I was going to say, it's funny. So obviously, Dr. Tachi, appreciate you being here as always. Earlier in the conversation, when before anybody had joined us on Clubhouse, when it was just Dom and I talking through this topic and through this idea, I basically said or made most of the points that you just made. In particular, I talked about citing or finding 3 other sources to corroborate information, etc. So like it was funny to me because so often you or I will just kind of say, well, I co-sign on what the other one says. But I find it interesting that even when you weren't here to hear that part of the conversation, you still essentially echoed what I said. So there's some, it's not just, you're not just taking the easy way off and saying, yeah, I agree with Tom. Like, it turns out we actually see a lot of these things in similar ways. So I appreciate that. I just thought that was fun to point out to you. Dom, before we get going to a wrap up here, because we're a couple minutes over where we normally end up, we got to do a quick trip down memory lane with you. So why don't you take us for a little walk real quick and share something from your memory lane.
Okay, this is a local one, and I'm having the summer of my life, guys. So I want you to be part of the summer of my life because the Pirates haven't won for 11 years, and they weren't good since 1992. So they're winning again, Tom. We're in it. My flag out in front of my house that only flies when they're above 500 has been up. We're competitive into August. That hasn't happened for years. But also this week in Pittsburgh, training camp starts for the Steelers. So we got training camp, which I have a Steelers hat on here, and then we have the Pirates still winning. So I'm on complete overload of goodness in the Pittsburgh area, Tom. So that's why I'm so cheery, so happy. I can represent both things in 1 week. I'm like, people asked me stuff for the next week, like, oh, they're like, we're going to go here. We got to do this business-wise. I'm like, clear the schedule because the Pirates are winning. The Steelers are starting. All is good in my world, Tom. So that's what I have for you in memory lane.
I love it. I imagine you sort of like, having multiple hats with you wherever you go, and you're just sort of alternating. Oh, I wore Steelers when I went into the last store, so when I go into this store, I got to wear the Pirates hat, and then when I get back out before I go into lunch, I'll put on the Steelers hat again. But yeah, it's I'm sure you're having a great time repping your Pittsburgh local sports teams, and I know you get a lot of pleasure out of that. So
I do.
Appreciate it.
Tom, I do, and I wanted to thank, like, people sometimes wonder, like, me and you admit we are not the smartest guys in the room. And about a year ago, I complained about losing hats, and I lose all my hats. And Dr. Tachi, you said, like, basically, she called me out and was like, well, you don't keep care of your hats enough. And so I got a hat rack for Christmas, 2 hat racks. I haven't lost a hat in, since Christmas. I put them up.
That's not true. You lost your Creative Con hat.
I did lose a Creative Con hat, but I wasn't home. I wasn't near my hat rack, so I was out of hat rack vicinity and lost hat. When I'm in hat rack vicinity, I now I got all these hats like the 2 I'm wearing today, Tom. So after you rebut on that, then we will set you up for a close. What do you got?
I like it that you can keep track of hats as long as you're in hat rack range. Now we just have to get you a sunglasses rack, and then you'll be all set. You won't lose hats or sunglasses as long as you're in sunglasses range. Yeah, I think that's the move. That's
a whole nother subject, which we don't have time for. Dig in next week to a sunglass conversation as well. So Tom, take us home. This has been a wild one, man. I can't even cover all the subjects. Only Tom Langen can. So what do you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, we talked about a lot of things today, but I think I'll just dig back to talking about TikTok and digital news consumption, right? And I'm going to echo some of the stuff I said earlier and some of the things that Dr. Tachi said as she talked about it as well. I think there's a couple of things that I really want people to keep in mind, right? First of all, the derision and dismissiveness with which people are looking at the vehicle through which people get their news is nothing new. It's the exact same derision and the exact same dismissiveness that print journalists looked at television and broadcast news media with when it first started back in the 1940s, 80 years ago. So let that roll off your back, right? Water off a duck's back. Doesn't make any difference. So let's not worry about that. The next thing, though, is, I think, very important. Two things you always have to remember, regardless of where you get your news, right? One is there is no such thing as completely unbiased news, because all news is delivered by people. It runs through a people filter, and every single human being carries bias, right? So there's no such thing as wholly unbiased news. Always remember that. And then always check your news, right? So regardless of how something is presented to you, you should always double check it for veracity, right? Go find those other sources. All you got to do is take the headline or the conclusion of the news story, right? Whatever the sort of fact is, throw it into a search and see what other sources come up, right? Read those sources real quick, look at the summaries of them, and you'll find really quickly whether or not what you were presented with can be trusted or not, right? And I think that's the thing, is for a long time, people got used to just accepting that what they were being presented with was trustworthy. And the truth of the matter is, it wasn't always, and we accepted it regardless. And it definitely isn't now, and we should not accept it, right? So always, always, always double and triple check, right? As Dr. Tachi said, look for 3 other sources, right? That's sort of the golden rule of thumb when it comes to research, is if you can find it replicated or reported in 3 other places independently, then there's a good chance that it's true, right? Or you can rely on it to be mostly truthful, but it's always biased, right? And then the last thing I'll say is, often there are things presented as news that are really punditry and really opinion. And I think we always need to be careful to make sure that, one, when we're presenting things as opinion, we contextualize it properly so that other people don't take it incorrectly or take it as fact. And then also, when we hear something, I think there's an onus on us, there's a responsibility on us before we pass that information on to contextualize it for people. So rather than saying it as fact, even if it was presented to you that way, contextualize it properly. Say, I heard so-and-so say blah, 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 right? I heard blah, 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 but I haven't checked it yet. I'm not positive that it's 100% accurate, right? Nobody's going to turn around to you and be like, what the hell, why don't you know, right? And if they do, tell them to kick rocks. But nobody's going to turn around and say that to you. They'll say, oh, that's interesting. Let's check that out. Let's see if that's true, right? Or did you check that out? Maybe that's an opportunity to have a conversation about whether or not it's true and look it up. But either way, I think there's a duty on us as individuals before we pass on information to contextualize it properly. And if we haven't verified it, then you shouldn't present it as fact. So that's kind of those are my thoughts. That's my wrap up. That's what I got for today. At the end of the day, times they are changing. People will get their news from wherever they are. And it just so happens that right now they're on TikTok, right? They're on Instagram. They're on YouTube Shorts. That's where people are. So that's where their news is being delivered. It just makes sense. Anyway, as always, we thank you guys and appreciate you guys for being here with us. You guys are what makes this show possible. You are who makes us, Dom and I, not the smartest guys in the room. So for Dom, I'm Tom. We thank you. We appreciate you. We love you. And we will see you next week at 9:30 a.m. Central for yet another edition of Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. We'll see you soon. Take care.